One. And we are recording on Thursday, November 9th, 2023 at 4:03 p.m. Eastern Time. Jeremy Brown, who I got in touch with through Mr. Dale Comstock, who fans of this show are very aware of. He's a longtime repeating guest. But so for everyone listening, we'll be doing this in 15-minute bits, and then you'll call back. Mr. Brown, just so I don't butcher it and I don't get anything wrong, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. And I could certainly introduce myself. My name is Jeremy Brown. I'm currently sentenced to 87 months in federal prison under the false charges of possession of weapons, possession of grenades, and possession of classified materials as a result of a fabricated FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force domestic terrorism search warrant, which was basically brought about because in December of 2020, the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force had sent two Department of Homeland Security investigators and attempted to recruit me to illegally infiltrate groups that I was associated with, of which at the time I was only associated with two groups. One was the Oath Keepers and one was the Special Forces Association. Of course, I not only refused this soft pitch as getting me to infiltrate law-abiding American citizens, but I also audio recorded that meeting. Now, this meeting took place a full 10 days before President Trump ever even announced the rally on January 6th.
Okay.
And so at the time of the recording, I simply only knew that it was illegal for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to be trying to infiltrate law-abiding citizens. But after January 6th and being in attendance on January 6th as a volunteer security detail member, at that point, I knew exactly why they had approached me. And so over the next month or so, hearing the false government narrative of what happened on January 6th, it became apparent that January 6th was a completely fraudulent and government-run operation. And so I went public with my recording on March 5th of 2021. And for months, the FBI attempted to ignore me, despite knowing that I was directly connected to all of the individuals that have since been convicted of conspiracy and seditious conspiracy. But it wasn't until my story started to pick up steam, thanks to Darren Beatty and many other independent and alternative news sources, that the FBI decided they could no longer ignore me and had to fabricate a case in order to arrest me and falsely convict me and keep me in a prison far away from testifying about January 6th at all.
So that's wild. So this was 10 days before it was ever even announced. That's
December 9th of 2020. And they actually approached us on December 4th. But of course, not wanting to speak to any federal agents who just show up randomly at your doorstep, I waited until they left and then engaged them via email in order to have a record of all conversations, and then set the personal meet up in Ybor City, which is a small, Cuban community right outside of downtown Tampa, in a public space. I let them know that I was recording. Apparently, they didn't take me seriously, but I recorded the entire approximately 20-minute conversation where they reveal quite a few things that are definitely part of the government corruption discussion that we are all having now.
Could you maybe touch on some of those, what they revealed? That's maybe, I mean, there's a lot of, kind of general assumptions. I think everyone knows the government's corrupt, and that's just like a truism, right? Like early bird gets the worm. It's like, yeah, the government's fucked, and it's kind of just accepted.
Right.
What specifically that would maybe be eyebrow raising?
Yeah. So the first thing that was eyebrow raising to me was one. The basis of the meeting was completely an entirely false predicate. And that was the predicate that I had posted things on social media And so therefore they needed to come have a conversation with me just to make sure that I was okay, because they could tell that I was a good guy. But in that conversation, they told me, well, you know, Twitter and Facebook directly push information to us, the Joint Terrorism Task Force of the FBI. That immediately hit me as, one, it's fascistic, and two, completely illegal, and certainly not the business model that I think that Facebook and Twitter was selling to their customers. But here we have two federal agents directly admitting that, not that they talk to them about what you say, but that they literally identify for themselves information that they believe is dangerous and push that directly to a federal law enforcement terrorism task force. And so that was very disturbing.
Yeah, that is kind of batshit. I mean, just playing devil's advocate, which is something I always do on this. I always do that. I'm 1,300 plus episodes into this podcast. I always play devil's advocate, so I always have to remind some people so they don't get their panties up in a bundle that I don't necessarily agree with what I'm saying, just for the sake of intellectual.
Tommy, we're a very sensitive people these days, so I certainly understand that. But play devil's advocate away, because I've always dreamed of having somebody try to disprove what I mean. I've been making these claims, and I've been sounding this alarm since March 5th of 2021, and I've yet to have anybody say, "God, this doesn't sound right," or "This doesn't sound right," and I can only contribute that to the fact that if people who listen to the recording, they just can't deny what the recording says.
Yeah. No, I have to play devil's advocate, if anything, just for my own sanity and intellectual freedom. I mean, if you can't play around with an idea and poke holes in it, then it doesn't seem to stir. So that's just my own. I have to do it. So, and for everybody listening, the link to your website is in the description. People can go read all about you. Yeah. So if I had to poke one hole, or attempt to, it would be, okay, I would push back and say it's not entirely fascistic if you had people at Twitter or Facebook reporting what they thought was terrorism. Just on the surface level. I don't know, you're some Joe Schmo dude working at a tech startup, and you see something that, I mean, and now obviously my devil's advocate would be, I think we all know that those are very left companies, and they're probably pointing out anyone like me who has an American flag in the background. That's probably terroristic in their minds. But just for shits and giggles, yeah, maybe, I don't know, maybe you see someone, toting a grenade launcher, and you have no idea whether or not it's legal, so you forward it to the FBI. That would be my surface level pushback. Now, we also do now know that regardless of, fuck them reporting to the FBI and all that, regardless of that, we now know through the Twitter files, through Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter about a year ago, and through the files released through Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald, who are both traditional liberals and who have now been painted as right-wing Nazis. We now know that it wasn't as simple as they were reporting stuff to the FBI and the DHS and the DOJ, but rather that these government agencies and departments had back-ended portals coded into these private corporations with their own liaison offices to suppress free speech, so we don't even need to touch on the fact that they were reporting to the FBI. Forget that entirely. We now know for a fact, with paper trails, that the government was working through these things through a hand-in-glove operation. And as we're seeing, or saw with Missouri v. Biden, they're even putting it forward an emergency injunction to continue doing this. So my whole devil's advocate point is moot from the start. It doesn't matter, because we now know the government's doing it. So it's fuck me. Well, I just walked myself in a circle.
I'm glad you've made your own counter argument.
I'm true to form. I'm the devil's advocate and the devil's advocate.
Well, here, let me shoot down your devil advocate to see even more.
Okay.
One, fascism is the unholy alliance
1 minute left.
between government and the corporation, right?
Yes.
So if the government issues protections to social media companies, of which they do under, I don't remember the exact code of the law, right? It's like 503 or whatever the thing that they've been arguing, right? The protections that say they are not responsible for editorial decisions,
Section
right?
230.
Because this is in line with the First Amendment. Then therefore, they cannot justify the surveilling of the content of their users because, see, they're exempt under this rule that has been given to them by this very government, but yet they voluntarily are reporting to the government when they have no obligation to do so. So this should be concerning. But then there's something even worse, which is the fact that they were lying completely, and I can get into that when I call back. So let me call back real quick.
Thank you for using Securus. Goodbye. The caller has hung up.
So he'll be calling back. He's using a detention center, and so he has 15-minute calls at a time. So he'll be calling back in a second. Yeah, anyone that obviously follows the show knows that I do. I play devil's advocate. I have to. For my side, this is how I talk in my head by myself, let alone on the podcast. So I have to show some level of devil's advocacy, just because, I have to. It's you got to poke holes in all things, or at least attempt to, and try to whittle down to whatever the truth is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would obviously, as I just said to him, I don't think too much of reporting to the FBI. I mean, I think if you're reporting to the FBI, you're just generally kind of a pussy, but that's a personal opinion. That's not a legal stipulation. But I don't think that's necessarily bad. Again, it's calling the cops on like a party with music too loud. Like you're just kind of a bitch, but it's not necessarily illegal. We do know that it was unconstitutional, and thus, right, if the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, then any unconstitutional law is, by its very nature, void. We do know that the government using these back-end portals through these private corporations, many of which are publicly held, Twitter not now because it's privately owned. We know that the Department of Homeland Security, that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, that the Department of Justice, and I would imagine any of the other alphabet agency. Here we go. All right. Back?
Yep. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, sir. All right. Yeah, I was just rambling on. Yeah, no, it's section 230 says that, and I always fuck it up, that they're not publishers or they are publishers, or in theory for the layman, it's like I do these podcasts. I would say that I have a direct control over these podcasts. I choose the guests I have. If at any point anyone ever said anything I didn't like, I would take the episode down. I have control over that versus when I do maybe a video game stream and people hop into the chat all the time. That one's much more free fall. People will come in and just say shit all the time that I have to ban them for. They'll be like, "Hey, let's take up arms," and I'll be like, "That's a Fed. You have to ban them." That's more. You can't be responsible for that. So yeah, no, the very nature of why are they monitoring all of this? Why are they pruning it and plucking it? If they are saying that, hey, we're not a publisher, we're a town square where people come in, and some people tweet pictures of their dogs, other people tweet pictures of, Hamas rockets and say, let's go. You can't control all of that. And if you do want to control all of it, that's fine, but then you don't get all the protections of a platform. You have to start, so you can't have your cake and eat it too, which clearly they've been doing. And then the natural question arises, how come anti-trust suits haven't been brought against these people? It's Teddy Roosevelt spinning in his grave, and it doesn't take too many ideas and too many brain cells firing together to go, if these massive monopolies are allowed to stay intact and the only people that can break them up are the government, is it too outlandish to imagine the government maybe says in private, hey, do what we say, and we won't break you up, which is fascism. It's the marriage of the corporation and the state.
Well, that's exactly right. But and then you look at even further incestuous relationships of for example, AWS, which is owned by Amazon,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
wins the contract to store all government data. Well, then if they were to create a social media platform or have investments, like let's say Elon Musk and SpaceX, contract for the government to put satellites into orbit or all these other things, they're much more willing. And see, this is how it gets into that fascistic, by definition, not Antifa the definition of fascism, but the actual Webster's Dictionary definition of fascism, which is basically the unholy alliance between corporations and the government in order to achieve the desires of the government, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly, so what the government is utilizing is this kind of handshake, dark, smoke-filled room agreement with tech companies to do what it's illegal straight out for the government to do, which is illegally surveil communications of Americans. But I said that it's even worse because when I actually asked the agents, and you can of course hear this in the recording, because now, something I might have glossed over or not mentioned at all is that I'm a 20-year retired Army Green Beret. I spent 17 years in Army Special Forces and 3 years in the Ranger Regiment, and I retired as the non-commissioned officer in charge of the Special Activities Branch, which oversaw covert, clandestine, and compartmentalized policy for Special Operations Command Central. So I'm not the average dude. I know how human intelligence works. I know how signals intelligence works and how open source intelligence analysts go, right? And so when I asked them specifically, well, what posts did they claim that I violated? Because see, the agents claimed I was making posts about civil war. So when I asked him, he first lies to me and says, oh, well, I don't have any of them. Now remember, these two federal agents are meeting with me to discuss posts about civil war that I made, but yet didn't bring them to the very meeting, okay? Well, then later in the conversation, I asked him again, because the first time I knew he was lying, and so I try it again. This time, he provides me a post that he did bring, but yet has nothing to do with civil war. It was a simple poker analogy that I made in reference to Donald Trump's position and the deep state's position as it pertains to the November 3rd election. So the reality is that they're flat out lying, and they're kind of using the excuse that, oh, well, Facebook and Twitter, they provided us, and we have to follow up on it. See, that's another scary thing, is that if Facebook and Twitter, which we know at the time, and maybe still are, were completely controlled by this left-wing agenda, and that the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force believes that they must follow up on it, well, see, that in itself is scary. It's the idea that red flag laws are going to take your weapons away, right, based on some ex parte order that you know nothing about, by simply saying, oh, you have a mental disorder, and then trying to give everybody in America a mental disorder. I mean, that's the basic equivalent.
Yeah, it is. It is a danger. I think maybe simpler for my generation to understand is like the idea of swatting. SWAT. How did I just misspell SWAT? SWAT is when people would call on rival gamers or people they didn't like, and they'd have the SWAT. They'd say, "Hey, this guy's a bomb," or he's talking about threatening himself while he's live streaming. And the first time I ever heard of swatting, I think I was probably in high school. I'm 33 now. When I first heard of it, I kind of laughed. I was like, "That's fucking funny." But I now realize, oh, they break down the door, and if you have no idea it's coming and you just stand up and go, yo, who the fuck's there? And it's a bunch of dudes, in all black with guns pointed, and you do anything other than put your hands up, you're going to get shot, even if you really are just streaming Minecraft. So what it really is it's an attempted murder. And then you go, oh, that is a difference. So if you have somebody
that is exactly right.
Yeah. If you have somebody on Twitter or Facebook looking at me because I'm a straight white man with an American flag behind me, and they go, You know what? Fuck Tommy. He's a bit of a Nazi. He uses an analogy and he talks about devil's advocacy. Maybe he worships Satan, and all of a sudden you got some dude, who might just be some poor schmuck working at the FBI who's taking orders from someone above him, and he goes, "I have to follow up with this shit." And all of a sudden you have, not only are they tying up resources, but they do have a form of intimidation to where you're being met with by federal agents. And again, someone like you're special forces, you're not flustered by this, but your average guy, agents come to their house and go, "Have you been posting this online?" They're probably going to shit a brick. So it is a form of intimidation. I don't
Well,
really know where I was
and
going
like
with
you
that,
said, it's meant to provoke a certain outcome, and that
Yes.
outcome in the worst scenario is murder, right? Because see, if you're exercising your Second Amendment to defend your home, right, and you're doing nothing wrong, you're in
Yeah.
your home, and then somebody busts your door down, your
Yeah.
immediate response isn't, "Oh, that must be the FBI."
Yeah.
No, your
No.
immediate response is, "Someone's breaking into my house and endangering my family. Let me grab my
Yeah.
God-given right to protect them."
Yeah.
Okay. But then, because we've created an environment within law enforcement to shoot first and ask questions later, the minute that they see a gun, they will shoot you. See, that is not the appropriate escalation of force, right? Because the mere presence of a gun in an American house is constitutionally protected. But see, we've created this environment that law enforcement believes that their life is constantly in danger, and in many cases it is. But see, they're also trained professionals. And see, like you said, Mr. Comstock, right? Any trained professional knows that before you engage someone with your weapon with the intent to destroy them, you must identify a
PID.
positive threat.
Yeah.
That's right. And the holding of a weapon is not that positive threat unless you're in a combat zone and you don't have to worry about constitutional rights. But see, Americans have constitutional rights, and therefore law enforcement must be held to a higher standard. Now, remember, it's a SWAT team, so they've already got their weapons trained on you. The mere fact that you have a pistol in your hand is not grounds to shoot you dead. And yet, how many times do we see that? So, but this brings up an even larger and a actually more scary point, because the likelihood that the first scenario happens is rare unless you're Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then it happens to you twice in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the more frightful thing is they are violating the 6th, 4th, and 1st Amendments by relying on anonymous tips through social media. So let me break this down. In my case alone, they're claiming they showed up because they were provided, all this stuff, right? And yet they initiated an investigation based off random tips, which I later found out in discovery. They had no investigation into who these people were. These are just people anonymously saying Jeremy Brown is a terrorist. And so they violate my 4th Amendment by obtaining a domestic terrorism search warrant based on an anonymous tip. That violates the 4th Amendment's requirement that there must be probable cause, and violates my 6th Amendment right that nobody knows who these accusers are. There's been no investigation by the FBI. They literally launched a unconstitutional domestic terrorism investigation, which allows them to circumvent the 4th Amendment's requirement of probable cause and specificity and particularity within the warrants themselves by going. And so this in itself is a violation of your 1st Amendment, because now you heard your neighbor just got raided in a domestic terrorism search warrant because of something he posted on social media in the so-called public square. Well, guess what? Now you're having your freedom of speech abridged by self-censoring, because you know the FBI is listening, because you saw what happened to your neighbor. And so now you cannot speak freely through the intimidation created by this entire diabolical program that they have figured out, utilizing this claim of domestic terrorism.
And then there's to play devil's advocate, is there is you also do have to kind of stand your ground and not be intimidated and self-censor. And it's very easy to say don't self-censor, if I'm someone whose neighbor hasn't been shot dead by an FBI SWAT team. I get that's a little more hardcore. But just in general, I mean, I got permanently banned. This podcast is my lifeline. It is my revenue stream. I've been banned from YouTube, iTunes, Twitter, Reddit, all for things that I knew if I kept talking about it, I was going to get banned. Election fraud, having on doctors talking about the COVID vaccine. So I do on one hand go, hey, you gotta kind of grab your balls and go, no, fuck them. I'm not going to self-censor. On the other hand, it's a lot different being banned from YouTube versus your neighbor get lit up by a SWAT team at 2 a.m. Granted, there's a difference.
Well, right. But there's no constitutional requirement that Americans not be cowards. However,
Sure.
There is a constitutional restriction on the federal government abridging your free speech, violating your privacy through illegal searches, seizures, and accusing you of crimes without giving you the ability to face your accuser. So we must hold the government to the standards for which we founded and formed them under. The contractual agreement between the states, which gave the federal government its power, is the United States Constitution, and its sole purpose is to restrict the government from violating our rights as given to us by our Creator. So I agree with you. Americans shouldn't be cowards, but they're not bound by law to not be cowards. The government is bound by law to not violate those things.
Fair enough. And I think it said you're.
Let me call back.
Okay.
The caller has hung up.
Yeah, no, all fair points. Yeah, we'll have to, when he comes back, we'll have to get into the agents meeting with him. Because I mean, the FBI absolutely does. I know for a fact they monitor this podcast, as they have told me to my face. So, I mean, I think the FBI is probably monitoring my show because they're all gay and they're attracted to me, which is fine. I don't judge them or their lifestyles. But I mean, let's be honest. We all know why they're watching my show. They've got a thing for blue-eyed white guys, and that's on them. Personally, not my cup of tea, but whatever. Not to inject total levity into the situation. Obviously, he's in the detention center. It's not very light to him. Yeah, I'm interested to cycle back as to why he ended up getting arrested. What was it? Was it retribution for recording? What was it? What was their logic, or what did they at least say their logic was? That's what I guess I'll ask when he comes back. That's why I didn't know they tried to recruit him to infiltrate these groups 10 days before Trump ever even announced January 6th. That's wild. I didn't know that. I don't know. But he gave the date, so. But yeah, I think Trump announced the January 6th rally like a week or 2 weeks beforehand. I wonder what. That's wild. Why they were recruiting him? Why at that time? Not that it's entirely important. It's the important fact is that they recruited him before the rally was announced. Here he is. Okay. Back?
All right, you got me, Tommy?
Yeah. Okay, so just talking aloud, thinking aloud. So back to
here, before you get started in your next thought, I wanted to address your devil advocacy because one, I love it. Okay, the devil's advocate mindset is really what we should all have, right? We should be questioning everything from grifters to government. Okay, but the problem is that grifters can only take your money. Government can take your liberty and your lives. And so we should be much more critical of the things told to us by our government than we are about somebody that's simply trying to get clicks and likes or money for some cause that the money never sees. So I just want to let you know that I commend you on your questioning of these things, because really we have to get back to that that American individualism, that rugged intellectualism that is what made America great to begin with, because there's way too many sheep out there that simply wave pom-poms for whatever side that they've decided to come down on. And I certainly don't want to be on any side. I'm on Jeremy Brown's side, and I agree with what I agree with, and I believe in what I believe in. And I wanted to just say I appreciate you bringing up points that many other people don't.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Well, I know I have people say, Tommy, are you a Republican or are you Democrat? I'm like, I'm Tommy. Fuck off. Like it's pretty simple when you
exactly
when you abandon the I'm on this team mindset, then it becomes, but what are you actually trying to do? You go, I'm just trying to find out the I was pre-med in college. I got into medical school. I talk about it all the time because it strokes my ego and makes me sound smarter than I am. But when you're taking a fucking test, one thing they tell you is like, don't ever get attached to whether or not 30 straight answers on a Scantron are A. Like, don't look at it and go, they're all A, man. Fuck it. Don't look at that. Look at every question as a new universe. Forget everything before it and just bubble the right answer. And that's because you're not married to any one of the bubbles, A, B, C, or D, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Same thing with political. I don't give a fuck if Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump or AOC or President Biden or Joseph Goebbels or Saddam Hussein said something. If something's accurate and it's honest and it makes sense, then it's accurate and it's honest and it makes sense. It just is what it is. I mean, if Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says that the military-industrial complex warrants unnecessary influence over people, or whether that was Dwight Eisenhower, look at who said it, or look at the actual fucking descendants. And if there's meat on it, take it. It just is what it is. So not doing that, it's why explains many of the problems of where we are now. So, but to pivot from there, back to, so just looking at, so obviously you have an illustrious career. It's kind of crazy that I get the whole, I've interviewed tons of FBI people, Delta Force people, CIA, intelligence, NSA. I've had a whole smorgasbord of people on here. What gets me is like what in God's name was actually going on that day? Because I've talked to authors, former Army intel guys. I've talked to people off it, not Dale. Obviously, everyone knows who Dale is, and I can honestly say it wasn't Dale. But I've had people say, like, I know for a fact that there were active members of Delta Force, of CAG, National Defense Force, whatever their new name is, at the Capitol, and not in the sense of like, they're former Delta, so they're in Secret Service. No, I mean that of Navy, of CIA, SAD, SOG, a ground branch. I mean, the most elite of the elite were, and I know that from authors who I've talked to off the record, so I won't say who, but who were there at the Capitol on, like, what in the fuck was going on? It just gets deep. Obviously, it's the Capitol. It wasn't a BLM George Floyd riot where they burned down a Target. I understand it's different. You're at the hub of where a presidential election is being certified. I understand that the security levels are higher. I'm not retarded, or at least I don't think I am. But like, I look at this and like the level of military talent, for lack of a better word, that was present there, undercover, not Secret Service, CIT, counter assault team, not Capitol Police. Again, I get all of that, not FBI, HRT, but undercover. I mean, the best of the best. What the fuck was going on?
So what was going on is what's known as a clandestine compartmentalized information. And many of those operators, of which I would love to talk to these guys, because, see, I'm merely making most of these assertions based off of my experience of how these operations go. I have not spoken, like you have, to some of the guys that were part of these units that were there. I'm reading the words of the Capitol Police Chief. I'm reading the words of a congressman who has 30 years of military experience and 20 years of law enforcement, or one or the other. I might have reversed those, right? I'm reading their observations, and I'm saying they're observing a compartmentalized operation. I'm looking at body cam footage of Metro PD officers undercover discussing their clandestine and covert markings.
Yeah.
And talking about their cover for status, cover for action, which is for undercover as Antifa. And yet members of Congress saying there was no Antifa there. Antifa doesn't exist. And so this is what the position I'm in. I know what I'm seeing. Can I prove to you? Well, no. The reason is because it's almost impossible to prove a well-planned compartmentalized operation.
Sure.
That's
By design.
why they're compartmentalized.
That's why they're
right?
Yeah. That's why they're
So the members of these operational or these special mission units or these tier 1 units, they were probably told something totally different than what they were actually doing.
Yeah.
Right? And
Sure.
you say, oh, well, you wouldn't lie to Delta Force. Yeah, they do it all the time. Right?
Yeah, you would.
The operator never knows the full extent of the big picture. Now, the Delta operator knows more than the infantryman,
Sure.
right, in the 82nd, but he still doesn't know everything, right? And so this is how these things are successful. And this is how something can happen. And people, when you tell them what probably happened, they say to you, well, yeah, but that's a conspiracy theory. Because if that happened, certainly somebody would talk about it. Oh, you mean like the Abel Danger testimony? Surrounding 9/11, you mean like that? Because nobody knows what Abel Danger is or has heard of Abel Danger. But guess what? I'm a Green Beret. I watched that captain testify. I know exactly what he was saying, right? And I know exactly what the fact that they ignored him means. And so this is the difficulty, because it's all easier to say, oh, yeah, well, how did they do it? In fact, the DOJ in my very trial has seeded false conflation to me, right? They know that I'm telling everybody that January 6th was a military coup, that was a false flag operation meant to intentionally target American patriots and Trump supporters or pro-life activists, right? It was to kick off the justification to send the Joint Terrorism Task Force around and arrest whoever the hell they want, whether it's you because you had Ashley Biden's diary or you got in the way of somebody trying to go kill their baby, right? They want to be able to arrest and imprison and hurt anybody that they want. And so January 6th was just the next version of the excuse to be able to do that. And so the federal government knew at my trial that this was what I was saying, that I was relying on my experience in these finer arts and the science of these types of operations, right? Managing them at the policy level, being involved with them at the operational and tactical level, right? I know what I know. They go into court and say, oh, Mr. Brown said that the 2 agents that recruited him planted the grenades because he made fun of them on a podcast. That is an absurd and ridiculous accusation. But see, they know that many people will hear that portion of the story and think that that's actually what I'm claiming, right? It's disinformation. It's military information support operations, right? MESO, right? It is the seeding of a lie in order to distract away from somebody who's getting way too close to the truth. And that's exactly why I sit in a prison sentenced to 87 months, and yet there's never been a single newspaper story run in the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal about my January 6th conviction, and yet they continue to run every other story because they don't want anyone to know that I exist. Just like they don't want anyone to know that Ray Epps was very likely one of their minions that too many people have found out about. So now what it is, they put him on 60 Minutes to try to fluff him up because he's compromised, but it's not going to work because there's too much evidence that he was clearly doing the very thing that they accused everyone else of doing.
Yeah, no, it's those are the reasons why those operations, go so well. There's a reason why I think the first official special access program was the Manhattan Project. I mean, Harry Truman was the vice president, and he found out about what it actually was 13 days after he was inaugurated. Like, there's a reason why this shit works, right? It's there. It no, someone wouldn't have talked. You can't talk if you don't know what the fuck is really going on, right? So, I mean, and who knows? Maybe the authors I talk to are lying in my face to make me say stupid shit on a podcast, and that which comes, I mean, on a philosophical level, which is what comes all the way back down to devil's advocacy and questioning everything, right? Is to that kind of allows you to weed this shit out, is always use an inquisitive mind, always assume that, trust but verify kind of thing. So yeah, I look at,
Right.
and again, another one of, amongst other things I like, I enjoy Photoshop. I enjoy working out. One of the odd things that I like, and I'm not sure why, is continuity of government. I think that's the OCD in me, the clinical OCD. Is I love the idea of backups, continuity of government, continuity of operations, enduring constitutional government. This great book called Raven Rock by Garrett Graff. I've had him on here. It's a great audiobook all about Raven Rock, Cheyenne Mountain, Mount Weather, all this shit. The Greenbrier Hotel, all the Peoc, all the bunkers and stuff. It's all fascinating. But I also get the sort of ability to enact these continuity of governments in case of an attack immediately, and that these plans are fine honed. So, you mean, to play devil's advocate again, it's either you're certifying, although I believe a fraudulent election on face value, we'll just say it's certifying an election, and the vice president is there, who is next in line to get the nuclear football. So, I'm willing to
You have 1 minute left.
concede that this kind of undercover security is always present, and it has been for decades. And we're just now seeing on January 6th, we're going, how come Delta was there? Maybe they're always there, and we just saw too close behind the veil. I'm willing to admit that. I know it said you got a minute left.
Well, no, but let me assure you,
Sure.
Delta has way higher requirements and things to do than do the Secret Service and the Diplomatic Secret Service and the Capitol Police. That is their direct tasking. There's no need for DOD special mission units to do the tasking of already established organizations. So that would be my shoot down of that concept, right?
Okay.
But I want to get into that when we get back, because there is a key aspect of this that proves that the whole thing is a lie.
Thank you for using Securus. Goodbye.
Okay, yeah, so he's gonna come back. And I mean, I guess if anyone, I'm admittedly a biology major. I don't understand what the what fucking security is necessary where. I have had on a guy from, was it the CSS? Is that the Diplomatic Security Service? CSS? Is that the one that does all the security for the embassies around the world? Yeah, it makes sense. But again, that's me, practicing what I preach, or I guess preaching what I practice. If it's just words, is just trying to look at everything and shoot down my own ideas. Maybe nuclear football. I know there's designated survivors on big days, like an inauguration, a certification, State of the Union. Sure, maybe you have a little extra beefy security that day. So that's just me throwing it. Again, I am a biology major. Sitting in a chair, not knowing what the fuck I'm talking about. But yeah, the more you look at January 6th, man, the number of fucking like units and assets present there, it doesn't proportionally add up. Again, I understand that there's more security around the Capitol than, say, a fucking Best Buy. I get that, right? It would be odd if they were, or it's, yeah, I'm here in, Portland, Maine. If a fucking CVS gets broken into, they're probably gonna have like 2 cops respond. I get that it's not the same as, the goddamn U.S. Capitol during the transfer of power. I get it, but I don't know. It seems like the proportional not affiliation, but presence of these units just doesn't quite. It doesn't seem like the balance sheet balances out. So all right,
All right. Can you hear me, Tommy?
yeah. So you said you wanted to get into what did you want to get into?
Yeah. So what I want to do is go back to your comment earlier where you said you can't have your cake and eat it. So you said, well, you've got the vice president there, you've got the president there, that would be fit. That would be freedom. You might have these things. Okay, possibly, right? But typically not if it's just the president. Now, you get other world leaders, and you might have DOD support because you need now additional manpower. But the U.S. Secret Service and the U.S. Diplomatic Secret Service is very robust, as well as we know from Capitol Police Chief Steve Sun, the Capitol Police Department is one of the largest departments in the entire country, right? So those resources are robust. But there's one problem, is that if we're saying we need DOD support for this event, right? Well, then that would mean that there was prior planning to this event and an assessment that there could be violence and everything. But see, we have a problem here because the government's narrative is, well, we didn't know that this could happen, which is why the Capitol Police were so ill-equipped and unprepared. But see, now that lie gets proven to be false because Metro PD, who would normally only assist in a mutual aid call, actually had covert undercovers inside acting as Antifa. They also had covert markings to identify themselves, right? And so there's all types of problems with this narrative. And then we have the FBI emails to leadership in Congress and the Senate, right? Claiming, oh, well, we have intelligence. But see, now we have a larger problem because now, and this is something that I'm dealing with right now, the FBI and the DOJ are desperately trying to prevent at all costs the revelation of the extent of the involvement of confidential human sources. So much so that over 2 years that I've been in jail, the FBI is still refusing, and the DOJ is still refusing to provide me with this information that should be part of my discovery because, see, they're using it in the case. They're making my attorney illegally, in violation of my Sixth Amendment right, to be presented with the evidence against me in order to examine its nature and its cause and to face my accusers. They make my attorney go to D.C. in order to look at this information. They're not allowed to take notes, and they're not allowed to let me see it, right? Because they know what they know I know what I'm looking at. You see, when Congress was talking about the 1023 form, and the FBI was able to throw out to the ignorant American population that, oh, well, that's an unsubstantiated report. And Congress is like, well, you should. It's unclassified, right? Oh, but Christopher Wray is like, oh, but we don't know anything. No, that's not true. A 1023 is simply a confidential human source report form. As part of that form, it could provide that source's reporting history and verify the validity and veracity of the information, or it could say this was just a walk-in. So the form itself is not what says it's verified or not verified. It's what the asset handler or the case officer or whatever the FBI calls them, right? What they write on that form. And see, there's many other forms involved in this, right? There's tasking form, which, in other words, if your source handler is tasked by hire to gain certain information, those would be in the form of tasking, which means when that handler meets with that source, they must ask those questions. Well, those forms exist. I have some of them. And see, the DOJ and FBI doesn't want that information in the hands of somebody like me who will see one form and say, okay, well, where are the other 3 forms that led to this form? Okay, where's the reporting history on this guy? How long has this guy been working for you guys? What has he been paid? How was he originally recruited, right? Because, see, that's how confidential human sources are developed. See, the FBI wants the American people to believe a confidential human source is a confidential informant. But those are two different things. You see, a confidential informant is just some sleazeball that gave up some information. Maybe he got something in return, maybe he didn't. But a confidential human source is a much more intrusive and invasive operation. It takes months, possibly years, to even spot, assess, recruit, and train and operationalize a confidential human source. And see, the FBI is trying to conflate two different things in order to mislead the public into believing that, oh, well, these are just people giving up tips. No, these are spies. These are intentionally recruited spies, many with shady backgrounds, yes, but they're intentionally recruited spies being used by the government in order to circumvent the constitutional rights of American citizens. And that is why whenever a member of Congress or the Senate asks about confidential human sources, what do they always say? Oh, we can't discuss sources and methods. Well, see, because if they did discuss those sources and methods, it would reveal that they're illegal. And that is what the DOJ and the FBI is desperately trying to prevent me from getting my beady little eyes on, because then I will fully explain to the American people, and hopefully many other special operators that know way more about this topic than I do out there will say, yeah, he's right. Just like a lot of my SF buddies, the night that I released the recording, joked and commented about how I schooled these two Department of Homeland Security agents because they had no idea what they were getting themselves into when they sat down with me thinking that I was just some down on my luck, washed up Green Beret who had an ex-wife and lost his kids. See, this was the failure of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. They underestimated their mark.
Yeah.
They thought that they could come at me with money and that I was so desperate because of my situation that I would compromise my beliefs and my principles for a little bit of money. But see, now, 2 years later, 2.5 years later, they definitely know that they were very, very wrong.
Yeah, it's me stumbling into a game of a pickup game of basketball with Michael fucking Jordan and thinking like, oh, I used to shoot hoops back in middle school. I'll take this guy's 20. And it's Michael. He's gonna dunk from the free throw line and break my neck in front of everyone. Fair enough. So
well, and see, this is the problem that 9/11 created. The post 9/11 nature of law enforcement that converted them in from a bunch of nerdy accountants into wannabe special operators, right? They even dress like it, right? They honestly believe that them taking down grandmas and pro-life activists and Catholics or whoever it is that they're rounding up this week, they honestly see those people as terrorists, and it makes them feel good to dress up in their multicam and put on their PVS 15s because some 74-year-old guy said he didn't like Biden and maybe said something stupid. So we need to show up like Delta Force and shoot him dead because, wow, he was a real threat, huh? I mean, this is the problem, is that these are a bunch of pretend wannabes that are exercising their absolute power on the American people. And they've learned from the best. See, when those agents showed up and introduced themselves with the Joint Terrorism Task Force, I told them, I said, I'm familiar with the Joint Terrorism Task Force because I've worked with them. And literally 38 seconds into it, he reveals he gives up the whole ghost. He says, well, maybe you will again. Let's see how this goes. Right then and there, 38 seconds, and you can listen to the recording. Go to jeremybrown.defense.com. You can listen to my original analysis of the recording and the recording in its entirety. 38 seconds into the introduction, I knew exactly what these guys were there to do, and they gave it all away. Right? So, see, the techniques that they're now using have been used for decades by Green Berets, by special mission units, by the CIA, by the OSS, by Marion's, the Swamp Fox, Francis Marion, whatever. I mean, these hundreds of years worth of development in these techniques. These guys are just brand new to the game, and that's why they screw it up.
Yeah, it's like going to like a drug deal in like the summer and wearing a trench coat so they can't see your wire. And you're like, how much weed do you have there, friend? Is that a sawed-off shotgun I see? And it's like they look at you. That's me as an undercover agent. I would be shot immediately because I'd be like, how much cocaine are we moving today? And they'd be like, they'd see the wire and they'd shoot me in the face. But that is the problem, though, right? Is that you have this sort of, this post 9/11 Patriot Act bloated DHS thing where you have a bunch of people who, I mean, it really is kind of poetic in that it's a national security apparatus manifestation of everyone gets a trophy. If you don't make it into Delta Force, well, you can be in DHS and you can have nods and you can have a gun and you can drive around in an MRAP, but it doesn't make you Delta Force.
Yeah.
But you almost makes you more dangerous
you can be
because
fat.
you think you are. Yeah.
Yeah. And you get to be fat and you make enough money that you can wear a Rolex on target.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the reality, right?
Yeah.
Of what is going on. I mean, it's disgusting and it has to stop.
Yeah. So then, yeah, like, the idea of it does kind of also come down to the, courage is courageous, where in a long enough time, truth is like an acid. It will start to dissolve the container it's held in, and the container you put in over that, it will dissolve that. And you do start to see it of where you'll have people talking about things very like it is now not at all weird for someone to get on Twitter and say, COVID-19 was made in the lab. But if you talk to any of the doctors that I'd been interviewing on my show for 3 years, it's the reason why they lost their jobs. It's the reason why they were banned from social media. But as it goes on, you can't hit all the whack-a-moles, and it eventually they just kind of let go of the narrative. So you do see it like on my favorite comedian Tim Dillon was on Joe Rogan. This was like 2 years ago. They were pulling up like film from January 6th, like surveillance camera film, and they're like, why are they opening the doors? How come the Capitol Police are opening the doors? And once you get to a platform that big, it does spew so much shit everywhere that you can't play whack-a-mole with all of it. So I would imagine if you're them,
Right.
what you do is you go, we've lost this narrative and that narrative. What we really have to do now is sort of pull back our forces and guard the most protected shit. So I would imagine with COVID, it's
That's
like,
right.
hey, we can't pull the
You
bat
have 1
pangolin
minute left.
story any longer. We gotta just, reel back our forces and guard, who funded it and not which lab it came from or something. So I'd imagine with January 6th, it's, hey, we can't hide anymore that there were informants or these special units or that they were letting people in. They have to sort of draw back your forces and go, we have to protect the big enchilada of that it's a coup at all. But it says that you have a minute left. So
They
you call back
they
and
have to hope. I can call back if you have time for another call.
yeah, keep going. Yeah, you call back. I'm gonna go piss. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
All right, great. Let's talk about the onion of compartmentalization when we get back.
Let's do it.
The caller has hung up.
All right, guys, I'll be right back. I can go to the bathroom. Could be coming back any second. Compartmentalization podcast. If this to be a truly great episode, it should end with FBI HRT coming through my window. Well, no, that implies hostage rescue. They're not rescuing me. They're killing me. That is in a funny universe where entropy is driven by humor. I should get raided right now and shot in the mouth. All right, you back?
Yep. You got me, Tommy?
Yeah. All right. So, yeah. So the idea of like, you got to pull back and cover the big enchilada about, you like the idea of limited hangout. You let them have some so that they stop barking up the tree, and then you hide the real family jewels. Going down the onion of compartmentalization, top secret, TSSCI, special access program, unacknowledged special access program, all the way down. What is the onion going to January 6th? What is the core, if we can even speculate?
Well, I mean, the ultimate core will be all of those involved, and why. I mean, I believe that at the core of this onion, what you're going to find is that there was a orchestrated military coup in order to prevent the Trump administration from continuing. Now, there are offshoots of that, like one of the lines of thinking that I am constantly developing is maybe Trump was in on the overall story. Who knows? We won't know until more and more if-then statements are executed, right? If this, well, then we should be able to see these things, right? But the essence of compartmentalization is like an onion, is that there are layers, right? So the initial narrative, the night of January 6th that pumped out over the news media, that's the outer layer of the onion, right? And the intent is to imprint on as many minds as possible that initial false narrative. Now, as that narrative falls apart, well, then there's the backup narrative, right? So the first narrative was, we're all shocked. No one knew that this was happening, right? Well, then the backup narrative was, well, there were indications because the FBI the night before did warn Congress, right? Except for the FBI had confidential human sources inside the Oath Keepers, according to my discovery, in at least November of 2020, because I have the reports right here in my jail cell, right? So if the FBI had confidential human sources inside the Oath Keepers, well, then certainly they would have known that if there was a master plan being developed, well, they wouldn't have information of it, right? But see, they don't want you to know that. They only want you to know that the night before, the FBI, like, somehow they got an alert on their text message or whatever, was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be a bad thing happen tomorrow. Quick, notify Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, right? That's ridiculous, but yet that's what they floated that, remember? I mean, it was a big, huge news story, right? And now that we all know that, well, actually, the Department of Defense, according to Steve Sun in his book, the Department of Defense, Chris Miller, a former Green Beret, and Mark Milley, a much more rotund former Green Beret, are developing wargaming scenarios well in advance of January 6th. Well, why is Department of Defense wargaming a civil law enforcement matter? I don't know. But yet that's what Steve Sun says happened. And then why didn't Steve Sun, who has an interagency intelligence unit, receive any of the outcomes of these so-called wargaming or intelligence reports? And besides, why is a civilian law enforcement have an interagency intel where half of the intelligence agencies giving them information are Department of Defense agencies? Wouldn't that, in essence, make the Department of Defense involved in law enforcement matters, which kind of seems like that's not right? So there's all of these, so the compartmentalized operation is built on all these layers of lies. And as one layer gets filled away by intrepid journalists, really persistent and annoying asshole Green Berets that are locked up in some jail in Florida, or, just people saying, well, that doesn't make any sense. When those types of things start to come off the layers, don't worry, they've got another plan to explain the next level, right? In signal reduction, which is the development of cover for action and cover for status, there are backstories. And guess what? If you're on some stupid mission that doesn't require a whole lot, you don't have a very good backstory. Good luck, okay?
Yeah.
The deeper and more secretive the operation, then the more effort goes into all of the layers to cover up all of your lies. And so just like with COVID, the initial thing was, it was a bat in a market. Gee, that sounds a lot like the storyline from the 2012 movie Contagion.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the initial version. Then it's like, it was an accidental release by China. Well, then it was, it was an intentional release. And then it was, Anthony Fauci was funding it. And now they're like, wait a minute, you mean these things are actually at the University of North Carolina? And then when they said, people might find out about it, then they transferred the research to Wuhan. I mean, these are all the different layers. And then you've got the CIA paying journalists and paying their own analysts to change their observations. Why? Because even their CIA analysts aren't read in to the compartmentalized operation. So in the modern day version of Buck Sexton is in there, and he's like, wait a minute, it kind of seems like this bioweapons stuff came from us. Then they go, hey, we could give you that big Christmas bonus if you simply change that to, say Russia did it. And this is how it works. And the idea that, if we would know about the truth, if that many people knew about it, it's just showing how ignorant people are as to how crafty and sneaky and devious the world of anything that has a secret or top secret on it is. I mean, remember, a security clearance just means your ability to not only lie, but to cover up that lie. That's all a security clearance does.
Yeah. Yeah, I've kind of started.
And I think John F. Kennedy said the word secret.
The very word secrecy is repugnant.
In a free society.
Yeah. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. Armies or guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Their mistakes are hidden.
That's right.
Triumphs are amplified. Yeah, no, of course, and and then I mean. And then you go in and you find out that like James Jesus Angleton had a file on Lee Harvey Oswald going back to 1959. And you're like, the fuck is that about? Like, why did they have the highest, it's like a 604 or something going back to 1959? And you start to look at it and you're like,
And so I run a podcast. It's called The Fusion Cell. And it's called that because our intent is to fuse all of these disparate observations into one common operating picture, right? Which is typical military intelligence lingo, right? And so we're going through an interview that was provided by Ted Gunderson, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ted Gunderson, everybody in the so-called conspiracy theory world, which just means a bunch of smart people that aren't stupid enough to believe the narrative given to them by the proven every time denying federal government, right? This guy's 28 years in the FBI. And he says these things like, as a matter of fact, this. And people will say, that guy's a conspiracy theory. Some housewife or some guy that mows his yard on Saturday knows more about the situation than Ted Gunderson? I mean, come on. But this is where the information dominant mind control infrastructure, that's the effect it has on the American people, where known experts in a field can just be dismissed by somebody that knows absolutely nothing other than what Rachel Maddow told them last night on her latest episode. I mean, and so it's almost impossible to convince everyone that they've been fooled, right? It's like the old saying says, it's easier to fool somebody than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. Because they've created this news cycle that everyone thinks they know everything, even though it's only about the 3 rotating topics that the government wants you to know about.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's brilliant in that it also plays into your ego. You know, the reason why it's so easy to do divide and conquer is because it is truly in the nature of Homo sapiens to be tribal. That's why we were able to successfully fight against woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, because we banded together, right? There's a reason. So tribalism isn't new. It's ingrained into who we are. So they're playing on that. And then I would say even deeper than that, and perhaps on a philosophical level, is ego. We don't want to be wrong, right? Yeah, it's easier to fool a man than it is to convince he's fooled. Or as Carl Sagan said, you know, the bamboozle. Once the bamboozle has you, you deny any evidence that it might be wrong, even if you think that you might be wrong, because you cannot. It's too painful to admit that you've been taken.
Right.
So these are things that they're woven into us. It's our very own nature. You know, when you see people jumping out of the World Trade Center, and you go, how could you jump to your death? And it's because you're being burned alive, and they're both imminent death, but one of them is imminent death 10 seconds later versus imminent death right now. And it's your very nature of jumping, right? So, you know, it's evil, but it's genius when you get into the psychology of why we go along with this bullshit. But I mean, things I always look at is like, I always look at just, you know, like if Tom Brady gives you advice on how to win a Super Bowl, no matter what anyone else says, maybe Tom Brady is telling you something goofy, right? He's like, put your socks in the freezer. And you're like, the fuck? At a certain point, though, you'd go like, man, he's got 7 Super Bowls. Like, maybe I should listen to him. I always look at like the most accomplished people in these fields. And now you look at Dwight Eisenhower, our last 5-star general, and his last day, or third to last day, he's in the Oval Office talking about the influences of a technocratic elite military-industrial complex. And 30 years before him, we have Smedley Butler talking about how war is a racket and how Al Capone operated in 3 counties. I operated in 3 continents. Like how I, you know, enacted these wars for Dole Banana and Tampico and, you know, and BP Oil. And you look at them and you're like, these aren't raving lunatics on a sidewalk, you know, with their pants around their ankles, exposing themselves. Like these are the highest, most accomplished people in their, I mean, Eisenhower, like the name Eisenhower, like you little less known, I don't know why, but Smedley Butler, they're going, hey man, and you can't accuse them of not being patriotic. They're going, hey man, there's some fuckery afoot. They're not saying it's all evil. As a matter of fact, they're saying it's mostly good people being led by a couple demons. But when you start to accept really the weight of those sentences, and it's easy to maybe forget it because, you know, the videos are in black and white and they're 80 years ago. You go, it seems like it's yesteryear. But when you think about, I mean, like the guy that led the invasion of D-Day is also coming out as president and going, hey man, there's some fuckery afoot. That's not nothing. I mean, 20 years before Smedley Butler, you have Woodrow Wilson in office talking about how the richest.
Or how about this?
Yeah.
One of the ones that we point to often is Yuri Bezmenov, right? From the other side.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what if we were to bring Hitler back and he were to admit that, hey, you know what? You guys are doing way better at Nazism than I ever hoped to do.
Probably would.
I mean, would anybody give him credibility?
He would absolutely say that. He would say that to a T. He'd be like, y'all are fucking good at this shit. He'd come back and look at the United States and be like, y'all are pulling this off well. We really are. Right?
But this is the sad thing that most people never think about when they listen to Eisenhower. And even I don't bring it up because I don't want to speak ill of the dead, and he's providing me with some good information. But it's a form of cowardice to, on the last day of your presidency, right?
And then leave.
You knew this all along, right?
Yeah.
So who's much more brave and bold and courageous than Eisenhower was? These FBI whistleblowers. who's been sitting in front of Congress and saying literally.
Thank you for using Securus. Goodbye.
Call back. He'll call back. He'll jump back. He'll jump back in. No, and I do agree with that. It's like Eisenhower. I'll save this point for when he comes back. But no, I agree with him entirely. Like, you wait until January 17th of your second term to come out and go, hey guys, by the way, it's all fucked. Like, and then hand it over to JFK and go, good luck, bud. And then JFK, to his credit, goes, I'm going to do something about it, and gets his dome fucking caved in the back of a Cadillac in Dallas. I mean, that is kind of more props to JFK than Eisenhower, and I love Eisenhower. But it's an unpopular opinion. But I mean, why didn't you do anything? Just sit there at the very end and go, and the councils of government. And if your logic is why didn't do anything because they would have killed me. If they're going to kill you, what are they going to do to us? No one had a better shot at ever changing any of this shit than Eisenhower. It is a complete concession of manliness which is, very, very arrogant for me to say. I've never served a day in my life and I'm sitting here under a blanket and slippers. I get that, but it is some bullshit. And Eisenhower looked down on JFK. He thought he was a pretty boy. He thought he was which he was. He thought he was a womanizer, which he was. But JFK fucking came in, dude, and challenged all of it and didn't even make it through a term because of it. All the while holding Curtis LeMay and the Dulles brothers and James Jesus Angleton at bay and not starting nuclear holocaust over the Cuban Missile Crisis. Sorry, he's back. Are you back?
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No. That's a brilliant point. What you're saying. Yeah.
My selective listening is tuning out the rude woman that cuts me off every 15 minutes.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever. Yeah, no, man. That's it's a brilliant point, and I have brought that up before. Like, it's no disrespect to Eisenhower, but you do kind of got to look at it and go, so let me get this straight. You're a 5-star general who, regardless if you had the constitutional authority, if you said I need all World War II veterans to come to DC, that people would have walked across they would have dragged their balls across hot coals to come fight for Ike one more time. But 3 days before his presidency ends, he goes, by the way, in the councils of government, there is influences warranted and unwarranted, and then just goes, peace out. And JFK takes over, and to his credit, fucking fights the whole thing until they shot him. Like, there is a little like, hey, Eisenhower, you did more than nothing. I appreciate that, but hey guys, it's fucked anyway. Take care. Like, that is some bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm with you.
You got Secret Service protection, and you don't have to worry about anything, right?
Yeah, right. It is some bullshit, right? They didn't. I mean, and he did. I mean, early Area 51 when they were testing the U-2 out there, and originally they wouldn't give out of Groom Lake. They wouldn't give the White House an update on how the plane development was going, and Eisenhower threatened at the Nevada using the threatened Groom Lake, which is in the Nevada test site. He said, I will invade Nevada with the First Army. If you basically get in line, don't break rank, chain of command. You tell the president what the fuck's going. I don't care if it's Area 51. You're telling me what's going on. And they did. And they showed him the plane. But where were those balls? And then the next step in logic would be Eisenhower concluded that they were too powerful and that they would have killed him. Okay. Well, then what is anyone going to do? If he can't take it on, the fuck are we going to do? So I completely agree with what you're saying.
Well, and that points to the principle that the president now is merely just a paper tiger figurehead. He doesn't run anything. It's the administrative state, right?
Yeah.
But what I was saying before I got cut off is that the true courage is from these FBI agents that, as field agents, these IRS agents that are going there and saying, hey, this is a direct quote. The bad guys are in charge. That's what the one agent, and I can't remember his name. It wasn't Steve Friend, it was the other guy. He literally, I heard him with my own ears. He told Congress, the bad guys are in charge of my agency. Okay? Is anyone going to listen to that guy? Anyone at all? You got Democrat, gay, IRS investigators going, hey, I'm gay and a Democrat. I'm certainly not doing this for partisan reasons, but what they're doing is wrong and illegal. Would somebody please listen to me? And yet, what happened? For 24 hours, conservative controlled talk media says, oh, did you hear this? And then the next day, hey, Trump, Biden, war. I mean, no one does anything anymore. I mean, look at John Durham. John Durham was tasked as the special counsel to get to the bottom of the Russian hoax. And he goes, and his testimony is, yeah, all of this stuff was illegal and wrong, and somebody needs to hold these people accountable. It's like, dude, you're the guy we put in charge of holding them accountable. And so nothing ever happens, because this is what I keep telling everybody. They're all in on it at this point.
Yeah.
And look, you mentioned tribalism earlier, and you're right. See, tribalism is a survival tool, right? It's how humans survive. But see, through all of the scientific trusting of the science that was developed by the CIA, they have hacked human nature, right? I mean, look at the Milgram experiment or the Stanford experiment. See, they study things to hurt and control us, right? And so they have managed to do that with tribalism. See, they have taken something meant, right, given to us by our creators as a protection tool, and they have hacked it to the point where now it is actually how we're being destroyed. Our tribalism has been weaponized against us, which is why there's the two-party duopoly, the uniparty, the tyranny of only two choices, right? And anyone who questions any narrative is immediately deemed a conspiracy theorist and thrown to the wolves of the useful idiots, whether they wear red hats or blue hats. I mean, I literally, in discussing our pre-show with the podcast, a topic will come up and I'll say, look, I don't want to get too close to calling out anything this person does, because if you do, boom, you'll lose 50% of your audience right there, because we're in too delicate of an information environment to just run through like a bull, a bull in a china shop, right? You have to be delicate. See, I understand what they're suffering from, right? And so therefore I have to measure the way I provide the information to them. Because if I were to say, you know, there's a lot of evidence that Trump could be in on this, I'm not saying that he is. I just said there's a lot of evidence that he could. Literally,
Absolutely.
anyone who loves Trump, boom, totally ignores you. They don't believe in devil advocacy like you do, which is why I wanted to make sure that you knew I appreciate that, right? In fact, I have a book idea of which I wanted to be a 4-book box set, right? And covering all aspects of this case, from my perspective to the political perspective to the legal perspective. And then I want one of the perspectives to be from a skeptic's perspective. And I want it to be written by a journalist who doesn't believe me. Yeah. Because, see, I believe in putting information to the test. I know the world of secrecy. I understand how the world is run, right? I know that the best lies are 95% true, okay? I know that we're all trapped in the tyranny of two choices. And this is why I ascribe to Neil Gorsuch's old saying, which is, don't believe anything that I tell you unless you verify it for yourself 100%. See, that is the mindset that we should have. We would be much more likely to survive our way through this war that we're in if we would all start being way more critical of the information that complete strangers are giving us. And let me give you a perfect example. I have an older lady who was part of my Florida state rep campaign, right? A volunteer, a nurse, her whole adult life, who tells her husband, please don't take the vaccine. And he takes the vaccine, and now he's dead from a heart condition that just sprang up, perfectly healthy, but took the vaccine His heart fell apart and he died. So he trusted the science. He trusted Anthony Fauci, who he's never met, will never meet now, over his wife, who loves him and has, if not more, medical experience than an actual nurse. He trusted some stranger, some failed Hooters waitress who now makes millions of dollars reading a script called the Nightly News over the wife who loves him. And now he's dead. And this is the environment that they have created, right? No one will believe anyone who they have direct, yet they'll believe some overpaid multi-million-dollar stranger who is provided storylines by the federal government, by the Department of Defense, by the Central Intelligence Agency, admitted, right? I mean, remember, we had more of those here in the church committee, right? Where all these conspiracies were like, well, yeah.
Family jewels. Yeah, they're all true. Yeah.
All true.
It's, which is why, I mean, to continue with my devil's advocacy, I get what your rationale about the delicate information operation and, you know, not going in like a bull in a china shop. I would respectfully disagree and say that's exactly what you have to do. When you start coddling around people is what leads to more problems. So, you know, I gained a lot of, I had a lot of people like love my show because I called out the election fraud as I was watching it happen, and I got banned from YouTube. And they're like, "Oh, Tommy's a real one." I'd interview these doctors before Dr. McCullough and Dr. Malone both went on Joe Rogan and became his two biggest episodes ever. I had them on my show multiple times each, and I got banned from YouTube for it and from iTunes. And you know, when we're giving money to say the Azov Battalion, I go, those are fucking Nazis, and I go, you're a Nazi for that, and half the people hate me. And now the inverse, you have a bunch of people fucking cheering for Hamas. And I did an episode 2 weeks ago with some former CIA analyst and a former ground branch guy. And when I was talking, I was like, yeah, I was like, no one wants to stand with Israel, and that I mean that you are, by definition, we got a lot of people who are pulling Nazi tenets. I've lost so many subscribers in the last 2 weeks from the people who are historically love my show because I've said one thing that they don't like, and my response to that is go fuck yourself, or as my dad's dad used to say, go shit in your hat. Go fuck your it is what it is, man. It's so I'm with you. You know, was Trump in on it? I'm not opposed to that idea at all. I mean, you know, the idea of how do you get the traditionally liberal group of people to start rallying against free speech? How do you get the group of people that would say never trust anyone over 30? You know, turn on, tune in, drop out. The whole 60s era. How do you get that bulk of people to fight against free speech? You get an evil orange man to come in there and say Mexicans are rapists. How do you get conservatives to be like, you know what, we shouldn't have bump stocks? You have Trump push it, right? How do you get conservatives to say red flag laws aren't bad? You get the MAGA man to say.
You're exactly right. See, these are all the same exact arguments.
What it is.
See, Tommy, let me be devil's advocate against you for a second.
All right.
People making illegal defense.
Jeremy, you're breaking. I can't hear you.
Got to make money, but it literally is like the love of money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah.
I can't afford to push those types of buttons because, see, most of those people are like, yeah, I was at January 6th. It was total bullshit. And if I said, well, yeah, you know, Trump was probably in on it, they would be like, oh, I'm not
fair enough.
Any legal defense funds.
Fair enough.
So, but you're absolutely right. And that's why I say we have these discussions. And a lot of the times the discussions are like, you know, it's painful because I'm like you. I don't really care what you think. The reality is it's happening whether you believe it or not. And I use this example all the time. You don't have to believe that when the suicide bomber blows himself up that he's going to get 72 virgins, right? You don't have to believe that. But you better know that when he believes it, you will be dead.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Reality is all that matters. Not what you believe, but reality. And so I try I don't not touch on these things. I just have to do it in a much more
No, I completely,
delicate way than just
You have 1 minute left.
throwing.
I completely get it. It says you have 1 minute left. Call back. We'll do
Yes, sir.
one more 15-minute block and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, awesome, Tommy. Thank you.
All right, beautiful. Yeah.
The caller has hung up.
Yeah. No, listen, I mean he's got a very legitimate point. You know, he is in jail and he does have people donating to a legal fund. I completely get. Maybe I should have that, you know, maybe if I was a little more delicate with my approach, I'd have more people on my Patreon or my locals. But there's also just like I'd kind of, if I can't speak my mind and say what I really believe, I'd rather just not do the podcast. I'd rather just go reapply to medical school and go be a doctor. Like the whole appeal of this is I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and say whatever I want. If I can't do that, like I'd kind of rather be fucking dead. I know it sounds dramatic, but it's why would I do this otherwise? Like, I don't have any like deep love of like broadcasting per se or journalism or right. It's not that like I'm here because I just love the camera and the microphone and the lights and no, I don't really fucking care about any of that. It's kind of a hassle more than anything. So to me, it's like if I can't like purely say the things I believe in, um, then then I kind of don't want to do it. So that's kind of my logic with it. But again, I'm not in jail and I don't need a legal defense fund. Knock on wood. I hope I don't. But I definitely get where he's coming from. Maybe I should be more diplomatic. Maybe I'd be a lot more successful. But then that leads to, I don't know, it leads to Tim Pool, where it's like he never takes a stance because he doesn't want to lose a single subscriber. All right. Back. Jeremy. Hello, hello. All right, Jeremy. I don't know if you can hear me. I can't hear you. Oh, no, it just broke up. But yeah, no, I mean, I guess the counter to what he was saying is if you can't speak the truth because you have monetary concerns for him, a legal fund. But by that same rationale, just playing devil's advocate, you could apply that to everything. The newscaster, maybe he doesn't agree with, pushing the vax, but he's got to send his kid to school. Or maybe maybe the FBI agent wants to whistleblow but can't because his fucking mom has cancer or something. He has to pay the bills. That it's a completely reasonable and human reason. But we got to accept how far it will run. So, but I also might just be like a fucking purist, and the radical fundamentalist purist always dies first because they don't understand the importance of nuance. So that might also just be my destiny, just to die. I don't know how I escalated it to me dying. Maybe I should tone it down. Maybe I'm the problem. But yeah, no, so I texted Don the plug. Here he is. You here?
Yeah. You got me, Tommy?
Yeah, you got you. Yeah, no, I was rambling on about yeah, I totally get the logic. Totally get the logic. You do have a legal fund. I guess I am lucky in that I can just scream and yell whatever the fuck I want with no real repercussions. I mean, I was kind of get a kick out of when people unsubscribe. I'm like, good. That means I've angered one more person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, so I get
Yeah,
you
it's like
entirely.
my co-host is like, oh my gosh, I can't take these trolls. And I'm like, I love talking to trolls. I
Yeah.
want people to hear me talking to trolls.
Yeah.
But I do want to say this, just to clarify to everybody out there. You have to realize that in my former profession, we work with bad guys to get to the worst guys, right?
Oh, yeah, no, sure.
Every
Yeah.
day
Sure.
you're analyzing whether or not this guy that's giving you 10 great targets in a row, whether the 11th will be the one where he leads you into an ambush, right? And so I just want everybody to know my mindset is if I had an intelligence board on my wall here, there'd be a good column, a bad column, and an unwitting column, and there would be information in all three columns, right? You've got to constantly analyze people based on their actions, not just their words. And at any time, a good guy can become a bad guy.
Sure. No, I 1,000% get that. Yeah, no, it is the idea of, it's like the CIA going in and doing this or that or the other thing, but the big picture is they did a lot less damage. And then the counter to that is like my background is being a science major in college. It was very much so like there's the correct answer and the incorrect answer, like no in between. And perhaps maybe my podcast would be a lot bigger if I had a more diplomatic approach to things, if I didn't just corner the market on conservative fans and then 2 minutes later and be like, Trump was in on January 6th, that fucking faggot. People are like, whoa. So it's just but it's my logic is like that my freedom is I get to say whatever I want. Like I have to, if I don't say whatever I want, then why the hell am I doing this? Like that's
I would be a loyal listener because I much more enjoy shows that are thought provoking. I don't want a show that's the same congressman, the same news reporters, right? I want to hear. I love listening to Democrat congressmen talk, okay? Because it gives me plenty of stuff to make fun of. I mean, I just read the intro to the January 6th report by Liz Cheney and the other guy, Benny Thompson, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the average conservative would never read those things. Why? Because I don't want to hear what they have to say. But if you don't know what your opponent, or as I like to call them, enemy, is saying, well, then how can you prepare to counter them? How can you have counter arguments to their points if you don't know the stupid stuff that they're going to say?
Not only that, but if you can't, as I've had on Brigadier General Robert Spalding, he was a B-2 Spirit pilot. He was in Obama's National Security Council. I think he was released from the White House in like 2015 or something because he kept bringing up the threat of China and the Belt and Road Initiative. I've had him on my show, and he has a book. Yeah, I know, right? He has 2 books, but one of them, Stealth War. And the one thing I appreciate about him though is he opens the book with like an opening couple paragraphs, just applauding and complimenting China, and then he goes on to tell you why they're demons from hell. But he goes,
right,
you have to respect what they're doing, like their ability at what they're like. The Nazis were evil. They also had rockets in the 40s. That's fucking impressive.
Right.
Like they're like, you have to respect it, right? So that's why I always look at what they're doing.
Saul Alinsky.
Yeah. Rules for radicals. You have to respect what they're doing and how they're accomplishing it.
Look at the success of the left in this country, right? And again, I go back to Yuri Bezmenov, right? In '85, Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB agent, was saying, man, what communists have done in America is so amazing that the great rulers of the Communist Party would be so happy, right? This was in '85.
Yeah.
Okay. Imagine if they were to look at today, right? But see, this is a testament to the success of these tactics, because I'm going to tell you right now, there aren't that many communists in America. It is not 50-50 the way we're lied to, right? Gerrymandering and rigged elections are what make us all psychologically think that we actually are 51-49. like the media tells us. That is no closer to the truth than me being able to go out into the day room tonight, have sex with another man, and get pregnant, okay? It just isn't the case. But they're so successful at their propaganda. They're so successful at putting their people in the correct places in order to perpetuate the myth that they are on equal footing numbers-wise, because, see, they have to, right? Alexander Solzhenitsyn talked about how in Poland, there were only like 50,000 communists, right, that had control over millions of Polish people, right? Why? Because they had the power, they projected that power, and those millions of people were deathly afraid of them, right? Millions of sheep could stomp the guts out of 10 wolves, but they're too fooled and cowardly to do it, right? And this is the brilliance of the way the Marxists and the communists and the globalists work.
Yeah, is amplifying the perception of their numbers. And it is true. I mean, by definition, you don't need to steal an election if you're the majority, right? You wouldn't need to fucking risk fraud is if you just had the majority. No one needs to lie about, McDonald's doesn't need to lie to you about how good their burgers are, right? It's fucking McDonald's, right? It's the drunk food. You don't need to lie about it.
Yeah.
And it's you have to respect it's brilliant. And I'm a conservative guy, but I get to those conclusions on my own. And to me, it's just a waste of time. I'm like, I don't need to watch conservative news or listen to conservative politics. Like, why do I need to? I know that they're not telling me my beliefs because I like to deduce my own beliefs. And then what am I do to have them reaffirm? Like, no, I don't need it. Like, if there's no point in. I've never watched Fox News in my fucking life. Like, I couldn't tell you any goddamn thing about Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity. Like, I can point them out in a lineup. That's about it. But I don't care. I don't watch Straight Guy Nightly and they tell me, hey, this woman's hot. She has tits and ass. And I go, oh, I'll make a note of that. It just is what it is. I see a chick and I go, she's fucking smoking hot. Like, I don't, you know what I mean though? Like, it is what it is. I don't take podcasting
I know
lessons.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it is what it is. But that also leans to, not practicing the political savviness of maybe I shouldn't say this and maybe I shouldn't say that. And for better or worse, it harms or helps my podcast. But I think I guess I just look at it more as like I guess this is an analogy I use that will get me on one more terrorist watch list. But it was like, if you had a gun and one bullet and you were in a plane, how would you do the most damage? Would you shoot somebody? No. Would you shoot out the window? Maybe. Depressurization. If you do one thing, what you would do is you'd shoot the pilot, and that's what would crash the plane. So I look at it as like, I have a limited amount of time in this world. I have this podcast. Sure, I could map out a complex idea of I'll stay near these topics and then I'll bring in this topic, and then slowly but surely I'll convince these conservatives that Trump was in on it. All the while, to me, I'm like, any day I could drop dead from an aneurysm. If I want to really impact this world, I can do one thing, and I can just say what I truly believe based on my own empirical evidence, using my eyes and ears and the brain God gave me. Maybe that leads to me saying Trump was a deep state asset, and maybe I'll lose 50% of my conservative fans. That's fine. I just look at it as like, I'm just going to walk in one direction, and it's telling the truth, and it's helped me thus far. And if it doesn't help me, then fuck it. Maybe the world wasn't worth helping. I guess that's the way.
Yeah, so be it, right?
Yeah, it's like, then okay.
Look.
Yeah.
If any of your other special operations guests haven't told you this before, and I'm not pandering to you, but you have the special operations mindset, right? Not the Marine mindset of, hey, there's a bunker, go get it, and right? That mindset is needed in an infantry soldier. But
sure.
See, when you start to get into the higher level of warfare, you can't have people that just simply go and do things because your commander says so, right? The reason why Special Forces and Green Berets particularly, but special forces or special operations in general tend to have a more adversarial relationship with conventional forces is because in the Army, in big Army, the regular Army, when a colonel says something, everyone says, sir, that's brilliant. Let's do it immediately. In special operations, when the colonel says something, we go, all right, that's probably a good idea. It might work that way, but maybe we could try this. Or we might just say, sir, that's the most ridiculous idea I've ever heard, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that's
right?
retarded.
And they need us to have that mindset, which is why they so selectively pluck us out of the regular Army through multiple psychological evaluations and all this other nonsense. They hate it, but they love it, right? We win in spite of them, and they need us to do that, right? And so it's why we create such a problem for all this false narrative bullshit. I mean, the reality is, if I was not sitting in a jail cell, and if I did not have to rely on the public exposure of my background and this story, I wouldn't be. I would be like all the other thousands of Green Berets out there that all know and see the exact same things I am, but see, they're doing it the right way. They're staying under the radar. Why? Because they don't want the Joint Terrorism Task Force showing up at their door, right? That's how it works. See, I have, in essence, been put into the position of the guy that has to be the public vocal, messenger, right? I don't want to be in this position. It's very unnatural for me. I was sitting on my couch as just some regular person. I mean, I ran for Congress, but it wasn't like I was on Fox News or anything, right? I mean, this is the reality. My situation, people are like, oh, he's always talking about this and talking about that. No, a normal guy wouldn't do that. Well, right, but I'm not a normal guy. I was framed by the FBI, and now I'm in jail, and my only protection against what they could possibly do to me is the fact that more people know about me, the less likely they are to Clinton side me, right? And so, this is the nature of the warfare that we're in, and it is warfare. Like I said, you don't have to believe it, but it is raging all around you right now. Read a book, listen to the Chinese, listen to Klaus Schwab. They're all telling you exactly what they're doing. You just are that guy saying, that'll never happen. Right?
You have 1 minute
left. I heard a guy last night say, oh, they'll never take the guns. They're already taking the guns. The ATF, with the stroke of a pen, made 22 million people felons by changing the definition of an AR pistol to a short barrel rifle. I mean, they're taking your guns, folks.
No, it is raging all around us. But hey, she gave you the 1 minute warning. So guys, go into the description. Please go to his website. There's a link to your podcast there. And dude, thank you for your time. I'd love to have you on again here sometime, man. I'd love to shoot the shit with you and see how many more people we can get to abandon my podcast.
Anytime. I've really enjoyed it. In fact, I just told my girlfriend, I said, I really like this guy. So thanks for having me on. And yes, please go to the website. Every dollar helps. I think we've got our appeal brief posted on there, so you'll see where your money's going.
All right. Well, so it just cut them off. Yeah, guys, the website will be in the description. And if you go there, you can see where you can donate to his defense. You can see where you can go see his podcast. And I will get more if I need to get more information. I'll get it from his girlfriend, who I'm in touch with. Obviously, I got to them through Dale. So yeah, I mean, keep fighting the good fight, guys. Don't give up. And it's also just, it is what it is, man. Don't try to pander to anybody. Don't try to walk a line and not upset these conservatives and vice versa. Maybe you're a liberal and you're going, I want to speak this part, but I don't want to lose my Democrat friend. Hey, man, speak the truth. Just fucking walk towards the truth. It's a compass, man. Just walk north. If that's where your goal is, just go there. Doesn't fucking matter what anyone else says. Just keep following the compass. The magnet's not going to lie to you. All right. And I guess that's kind of how I look at it, is if this world, if this society, if this country is worth you know, if it's worth any part of our efforts to try to make it better for the next generation, which is what man has been doing for the last 50,000 generations, then it will correct. And if it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. But I know for me, and I can only speak for myself, I have to I have to try. I can't I can't go to bed at night and I can't lay down at the end of my life and know that I haven't tried. I have to try. I'd like to see it work out. My own ego. I like to see my efforts rewarded. But I also just have to try. So that's why I'm doing it. You guys can come up with your own reasons. I really don't give a shit. If you don't like this podcast, go fuck yourself. And if you do like it, cool, stick around. I imagine I'll piss you off too. It's okay to disagree with people. Be a devil's advocate. Don't be a pussy. Don't fall in line. Say what your truth is, man. And yeah, everybody else can go to fucking hell. Bunch of faggots. All right, guys. God bless America. Much love, everybody.